Hello, welcome to our very first session for Splunk Learning, and we will be discussing about the Splunk and its administration and some form of log monitoring using Splunk in this course. To start with an introduction to Splunk. Splunk is an SIEM platform, security incident and event management platform. Splunk is currently part of a Cisco security product portfolio. It was acquired by Cisco a few years back, and it's one of the leading SIEM providers in the market right now. So, the purpose of Splunk is to collect the logs from the various sources and use that particular logs for the proactive monitoring purposes, especially in the security events. And also, Splunk helps in achieving certain level of complaints when it comes to log retention, meeting a specific regulatory requirements, right? So Splunk comes in two variants. One is the Splunk Enterprise and the other one is Splunk Cloud. In this entire video series, we will be touch basing only on the Splunk Enterprise version, and maybe in the future, uh, I'll try to create some videos around the Splunk Cloud. But in this session, we will be primarily looking at Splunk Enterprise and its components. Uh, yes. So when we speak about Splunk components, Splunk has about components like forwarders, indexers, search head, deployment server, and license servers. So these are all the essential core components of Splunk, which is used to forward the logs from the servers, receive it, parse it, and it stores it, and it helps in searching the stored logs for retrieval purposes, generating reports, dashboards, and also helps in automating the Splunk forwarders and receiving various logs which is required for the collection purposes and to exclude it, and also to maintain the various licenses applied to the Splunk components. So starting with the forwarders. So forwarders are the components which are essential in forwarding the logs from the various operating system or the log sources to the Splunk core components. So the forwarders are there are two types of forwarders. One is universal forwarder, the other one is heavy forwarder. Universal forwarder is a lightweight agent which can be installed in the various operating systems like Linux, Windows, and the Mac OS for collecting the logs. And this universal forwarder collects the logs, whatever we specify. It could be like operating system logs, security logs, application logs, etc. And then it forwards it to the Splunk indexer. Right. So this is a typical deployment of a universal forwarder, and we also have a different forwarder called heavy forwarder. So this heavy forwarder is a full Splunk instance itself. It actually collects the logs locally and then it forwards it to the indexers. So universal forwarder is kind of um, applicable to the end user machines like laptops, servers, etc. Whereas heavy forwarder, it can be installed in a branched location, whereas it collects all the logs from that particular branch location and it forwards the logs, consolidates it, and then parses, normalizes, and sends it to the Splunk core. So now speaking about the indexer, so the indexer is a component of a Splunk which receives the logs either from the universal forwarder or the heavy forwarder. Once the logs are received, it actually parses, normalizes the logs, and stores it in the databases. So every time you configure this universal or heavy forwarder, you have to specify the index where these logs needs to be ingested into, right? So you will be creating different indexes. Indexes are nothing but a databases where Splunk stores the data which is received from the various universal forwarder and heavy forwarders. Now next is called search head. Search head is the GUI, user interface of Splunk, where Splunk administrators, SOC analyst actually accesses the Splunk interface for various purposes, like searching the logs, generating the reports, creating the dashboards for the monitoring purposes. So all these purposes, Splunk search head plays a key role, and it's a very closest component to the end user. The next component is called deployment server. So this deployment server, it helps in automating the configuration of forwarders from a centralized location. So let's assume that we have got hundreds of servers, thousands of endpoints in an organization's infrastructure. So it will be a very tedious task to go and manually configure these universal forwarders and heavy forwarders, about the logs that we need to collect, the logs that we need to exclude, etc. Right. So this deployment server helps in automating such configurations from an organization point of view, and it helps a lot of time and efforts in terms of what log needs to be collected, what log needs to be excluded, etc., and in an automated way. So finally, we have got a license server which helps in applying the licenses and also monitoring the licenses whatever we have procured from the Splunk. So each and every Splunk instances like search head, indexer, all these servers comes with the licenses. So it may have some kind of a limitations, like we will be able to run only two instances of Splunk indexes, or these will only support one cluster of Splunk indexes or one cluster of Splunk search heads. So all these things are monitored using this particular license server. So and also it helps in viewing or applying the various Splunk licenses, like log ingestion rate. So there is it's also a license component. We will be able to uh, ingest certain amount of logs based on the licenses that we have purchased. So monitoring and applying all those licenses are made easy from these license servers. And now let's quickly jump into architecture of Splunk in my lab environment, right? So I've got uh, a single Splunk instance running all these um, services like indexer, searcher, deployment server, and license server. And also I've got a web application, so DVW application, which is running in an Ubuntu machine, and I have my universal forwarder installed. So once you install your universal forwarder, the universal forwarder will send the logs to the indexer in the Splunk, and it uses TCP port number 9997 for sending the logs. Once the indexer receives it, it normalizes, parses, and stores the logs in a specific index, whatever we have configured in this universal forwarder. And next we have got the search head. So whatever the logs which is received and stored in the indexer, we can use the search head to perform the searches against the indexes using various SPL queries. Again, the search head to indexer communication happens in TCP port number 8089. That is the common management port in the Splunk, uh, and it uses TCP 8089 for any communication purposes between the Splunk components. The next is called the deployment server. The deployment server is used to automate the configuration pushes and the upgrades of the universal forwarders in the Splunk deployments. It will help in specifying the logs that needs to be collected, the logs that needs to be excluded, the log needs to be sent to which indexer. All these informations are configured in the universal forwarder using the inputs.conf and outputs.conf file. And using this deployment server, it can be automated. And finally, again, the license server. The license server helps in applying the license to all these Splunk components like indexer, searcher, and deployment servers, universal forwarders, and also helps in monitoring the log ingestion rates. So these are all the few basic components of Splunk that we will be using to configure and run our lab setup. We will discuss about configuring the universal forwarder in an Ubuntu machine in my next session. Thank you.